YouTube. It's Charles the Destroyer. I'm gonna watch South Korea's Over. I don't know what this is. Grab your snackies, grab your bevies. Let me know what you're eating and or drinking down below, and let's get to watching.
South Korea is over. This sounds brutal, but South Korea will soon start melting on all fronts. Demographically, economically, socially, culturally, and militarily.
Oh, I think I know where this is going.
Because for decades, the country has been experiencing a fertility crisis unprecedented in human history.
So yes, I feel like we're also seeing a fertility crisis in a lot of places. Most places, actually. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like we're just in general seeing fertility crises kind of all over.
And we've probably reached a point of no return. By 2060, the South Korea we know and love today will no longer exist. What will the collapse look like? And why is it now almost impossible to stop? The real population bomb. To have a stable population, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1 children per woman. In the 1950s, South Koreans used to have 6 children on average. In the 1980s, the rate fell below 2. And in 2023, it was 0.72 kids per woman, the lowest ever recorded in history. In Seoul, fertility is even lower, around 0.55.
Because living is expensive and children are very expensive. And then also I feel like they did a lot of kind of incentives to have less kids at one point, and now they're regretting those incentives. I want to say, I could be wrong, that might not have been South Korea, but somebody at some point had like a lot of incentives of like, hey, have less kids. So it wasn't just China. Someone did like ads, like television ads. No, it wasn't just China. I'm telling you, it was not just China.
On average, about half of the women here won't have any kids, and the other half just one. What do these numbers actually mean in the real world? If fertility stays as it is, then 100 South Koreans will have 36 kids. When they grow up, they will have 13 kids, who will then have 5. Within 4 generations, 100 South Koreans will turn into 5. If we look at today's South Korean population pyramid, we see this is pretty real. There's only one 1-year-old for 4 50-year-olds. After 4 decades below the replacement level, the consequences were still largely invisible. Today, South Korea's population is at an all-time high, as are its workforce and its GDP, which is still growing. But demographics hits you like a freight train. You hear it vaguely in the distance, and then it runs you over.
Boom.
South Korea is about to be hit. Let's time travel 35 years into the future to 2060 and see what the country will look like then.
First of all, there's no way it looks like this. Like, I don't care.
To the future to 2060 and see what the...
They said we were going to have flying cars in the 2000s. That's not really happening. I mean, we have planes, but like, that's not a flying car. Whatever. I also wouldn't trust flying cars anyway. But still, it's not going to look like this.
Country will look like then. When it comes to demographics, the most commonly used projections are those put together by the UN. They envisage 3 scenarios: low fertility, medium, and high. But in the past, all medium UN projections for South Korea have consistently been too positive. Between 2022 and 2023 alone, fertility in South Korea dropped by another 8%. So we're going to use the latest low fertility scenario, which has been the most accurate in the last few years. Keep in mind that we're still talking about projections.
I'm sorry. I really like these birds. As someone who in generally doesn't like birds because I'm allergic to their stupid feathers, I just love these little cartoon birds. Look at them.
And the future is a faraway land. Okay, let's do it. In 2060, South Korea's population pyramid will look like this. The population will have shrunk by 30%. 16 million South Koreans will have disappeared in just 35 years. And it'll be the oldest country in human history. 1 in 2 South Koreans will be over the age of 65. Less than 1 in 10 will be under 25. And only 1 in 100 will be small children. Imagine waking up in a country where the streets are strangely quiet with no children playing on them. Entire cities have been abandoned. Half of the population is elderly and living either alone or in overcrowded retirement homes, with a minority of people desperately trying to keep society running. There will be a few major consequences. Economic collapse.
Yep.
In 2023, a breathtaking 40% of South Koreans over 65 lived below the poverty line. But in 2060, this number may seem lovely in comparison. Today, South Korea has one of the largest pension funds in the world, worth about 730 billion US dollars. But it's projected to stop growing in the 2040s and be completely depleted by the 2050s.
You do not have workers to increase that. It is going to get run through. But we see this, again, in countries all over the world. The United States is also having a fertility crisis. A lot of people are reasoning that that's why some of the laws that have been passing lately have been passed and put up, is because we are having a fertility crisis. We are not replenishing the working population. So this isn't just South Korea. I mean, South Korea is hitting it pretty quickly, or I guess sooner, but we're going to see the same thing in a lot of countries.
So in 2060, pensions will have to be paid by the working population. Estimates vary, but for a pension system to work, the minimum a society needs is between 2 to 3 workers per retiree paying for them with their taxes. But even if we assume that all South Koreans over 15 will be working in 2060, the country will have less than 1 worker per senior. Workers will be unable to stem the incredible costs. So not only will poverty among the elderly be common, but a big chunk will be forced to work. Except they may not be able to find jobs because by 2060, the South Korean economy may have collapsed. Broadly speaking, the size of an economy is linked to the size of its workforce. To have a big economy, you need a lot of workers to produce a lot of things and a lot more people to buy them. Today, South Korea has about 37 million people.
I just want to say, a healthy economy has people working jobs, getting money, and then turning around and spending that money so that it goes back into the workforce, if that makes any sense. So like I work at I'm trying to think of something. I work at Aldi. I don't care, whatever. I work at Aldi, right? They pay me money, I turn around, I spend that money. I spend it at the mall, I spend it at Target, I spend it at Walmart, I spend it at Aldi, whatever. They get money, they turn around, they pay the workers that work for them. It is a circle. You have to continue that cycle of spending money and getting money, right? We have an issue where certain people are hoarding money so that the money isn't going back into the economy, which is causing some issues for our economy. And it's not, again, just the US. It's a lot of places. I'm just saying, you have to, it is, what is it? The responsibility of the bourgeoisie to spend money. Like, that is a quote. It probably isn't correctly said, but that is a quote. It is the responsibility of the wealthy to spend their money because that boosts economies. Wealthy people need to be spending money. Like, I understand it's like, oh, that's just luxurious bullshit. That's fine. I don't care as long as you're spending the money and not just hoarding it. And I'm not saying like spend every penny you have. I don't think that's realistic either, but you do need to be spending money. You need to be putting it back in the economy for economies to be healthy.
Working age, generating a GDP of about 1.7 trillion US dollars. But by 2060, its workforce would have shrunk to less than half, to about 17 million. Of course, technological progress means that productivity will be higher and each individual will probably produce more than today. But even if productivity keeps growing at the same rate or more than we've seen in the last decades, South Korea's GDP could peak in the 2040s.
Can I also say something else? I'm going to. I mean, I don't know why I'm asking the question. So I feel like, one, there's a lot of people that live basically paycheck to paycheck or are unable to save money. Okay. That is a reality that we all face. And then there are people that are able to save money. Some of them might not. And then some of them do, right? And then I feel like there are people that save money that are too hesitant to use it, right? So like, hey, I have money, but what if I need this money? What if something happens? I need to continuously save my money. Like I have to save my money forever. I cannot spend any of my money because what if something happens and I need this money later? So, and I'm not even saying that that is unrealistic and you should not do that. I'm not saying that. But because that is a thing, because especially in the United States, you know, you could get sick or you could get hurt or your car could break down or a lot of things can happen to where you need a lot of money, right? So like that's not even unrealistic to save that money for a quote unquote rainy day because shit happens and things are expensive. But because there is that mindset of I have to save this money and kind of hoard this money, it's not going back into the economy, which is just causing more things to be somewhat the economy's not healthy. Like it's just not. Like, and again, I am not even arguing that that is a bad idea. I completely understand hoarding money because what if something happens? What if something happens to your house, your car, yourself, your family member, whatever? I don't care. What if something happens? What if your computer dies and that's your main source of income and you need to buy no new one? Like whatever. It's realistic to save for rainy days and stuff. It's just like it feels like, and like also you have to save for retirement because a lot of people don't live or don't work where they're gonna get retirement or whatever. And there's like the feeling of I can't trust in Social Security. I can't trust in stuff like this. So I have to save for myself, which means I have to hoard money. And I get it. And I don't disagree with it. But because of all of these things, it's like it's hurting the economy. Just anyway.
In other words, South Korea will enter a permanent economic recession. There are more optimistic projections that see the recession begin as late as 2050, but they're based on the medium UN demographic scenario, and there are no signs that we're heading there. Another factor in the economy is science, technology, and innovation, areas in which big leaps are typically made by young adults and the middle-aged. Young people have fresh ideas that contribute to the wealth of society. Significantly fewer people working also means way less tax for the government, which will be trapped between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, having to provide for half the population that are seniors, on the other, seeing its income diminish. It will be forced to shut down or cut essential services like hospitals or social benefits. Since infrastructure only works at scale, smaller communities may be abandoned as the country contracts into its metropolitan areas. And of course, there won't be enough money to invest in the future. This is bad. But what will happen to South Korean society and culture may be worse. Societal and cultural collapse.
Oh my God, look at this bird. Look at it.
Speculating on how societies will develop is extra hard, but there are a few pretty unavoidable trends. Today, already about 20% of Koreans live alone. Also, 20% report having no close friends or relatives. By 2060, 50% of South Koreans aged 70 will have no siblings and 30% will have no children. Young adults between 25 and 35 will only make up 5% of the population and typically have no siblings at all. This leaves the elderly with almost no close family and young adults with little family and few potential friends, especially outside of big cities. A loneliness
Loneliness epidemic
of
there it
epic
is.
proportions is all but guaranteed.
It is hard to meet people and form close relationships. It's hard to do that now. We have turned, especially since the pandemic, but even before then, we have turned to a more online society. It is hard to meet people. It just is. I can't even fault you. I mean, I'm very much an online person-ish. I am actively having so it's like, oh, to grow, I should be trying to do collabs and meet new people, maybe in the VTubing community and all this other stuff. It's hard. It's scary to make friends online. You don't know those people. You can't really get their vibe through online means. To me, at least I feel like that way. I have an easier time catching someone's vibe by talking to them in person than I do through text or through me watching them stream or whatever. Like it's scary. it's hard to make new friends. Like it's really hard to find people you can connect with. Like it's really, I'm not even joking. Like that's part of it. Like how we as a society have moved how our social stuff works, I guess.
On top of
Also just being burnt out. You're constantly working, you're constantly trying to like survive. It's just rough.
that, South Korean culture will probably experience a huge decline. In 2000, there were 17.5 million South Koreans between 25 and 45, and they made up 37% of the population. This was the generation that brought us K-pop, K-drama, K-food, and many other trends that spread
Hell
around
yeah.
the world.
Hell
In
yeah.
2060, there will be just 5.6 million people in that age group, and they'll only be 16% of the population. Many cultural traditions are already struggling because the older generations are having trouble finding young people to pass them on to. As young people disappear, many traditions will die out. Without young people, the soul of South Korean culture will shrink and wither away. And on a personal level, what kind of experience will it be growing up in 2060? What will youth culture be like in a country of seniors, where many universities, schools...
Did I say rent a grandpa?
What will youth culture be like in a country of seniors?
Rent a grandpa. Senior community center. Peaceful yoga for seniors. Dental clinic. Wheelchairs. Rent a grandpa was funny to me.
Where many universities, schools and kindergartens are abandoned.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. The cat. I'm so sorry. I love him. All right, anyway, sorry.
As there are no longer children to fill them with life. What kind of job prospects will they face, and what will politics look like? If young people don't want to remain alone, they'll concentrate in Seoul or a few other big cities, or worse for South Korea, emigrate to other countries. Rural areas will decline, and most smaller
Look at the little K truck.
cities will turn into ghost towns. We're already seeing this in Japan, which has almost 10 million abandoned houses in rural areas. Large parts of South Korea will simply vanish and be reclaimed by nature. Last but not least, South and North Korea are technically at war, and they could very well still be in 2060. Will South Korea still be able to afford to have its young men do 18 months of mandatory military service? Today, 5% of men of combat age are enrolled in the military. In 2060, it would have to be 15% just to match today's numbers. Okay, wait, this is all a bit much. Is there no way back? Why, there really is no way back. The problem with the demographic freight train is that once it hits, things become irreversible. Let's say fertility in South Korea magically triples to the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman and stays there. In 2060, it will be an inverted pyramid on top of a barrel. And there would still be only 1.5 people of working age per senior over 65. Even in the best made-up scenario, South Korea has to pass through an unavoidable bottleneck before it will recover. But there is also a kernel of hope here. Yes, the situation is grim, but at least in the long term, recovery is possible if South Korea enacts rapid and societal changes that make its population want to have kids again. In 2024, births rose for the first time in 9 years, 3% more than in 2023. But for that to continue, South Korea needs to face the music and ask how they got to this point. How could it get that bad? In general, as societies get richer, more educated and child mortality plummets, people decide to have fewer kids. What makes South Korea special is that it's somehow supercharging all of these trends. South Korea lifted itself out of poverty in record time, but in doing so it developed a unique kind of workaholism and extreme competitiveness. Although the work week is 40 hours and the legal maximum is 52 per week, unpaid overtime is normal for many, and the government even proposed to raise legal work time to 69 hours per week.
You are not going to grow your population this way. Like, okay. So, people need to be able to have a very healthy work-life balance, which we have seen as an issue for years at this point. Like, this is capitalist society bullshit stuff, right? Like, 40 hours, you probably need to cut it down. There's been studies done where, like, you don't need a 40-hour work week, that people will do the same amount of work in less hours. That is an actual study that has been done, that people waste time with a 40-hour work week. And I'm not going to say that's necessarily for every single job. I mean, you have some jobs that's not true to that, right? But like, you're overworking your population. And you're not even paying them what they need to be paid. Also, you pay them more. I know it's hard. Like, I get it. It's hard, but you need to cut down on hours and raise wages. Here's the thing. Healthy work-life balance. You have to let them go have a family. You have to let them go interact with their family. You have to give them family time and vacations. All right? They need to be working toward a goal, and the goal is not just to work. The goal is, I want to give my, spouse and my children a comfortable, healthy, fun life. And I also get to enjoy that. I also get to enjoy my life at the end of the day. We get to go on vacations. We get to go have nice things. My kids get put in good schools. We live in a good house, or a good neighborhood. And I'm able to do all that because I'm working, but I'm also able to spend time with my children. We're able to go out to eat together. We're able to celebrate together. We're able to go on vacations together. Like, I get to help them with homework at the end of the day. Like, if you don't have a healthy work-life balance, then all that you're doing is work. So you are not going out and having families. So, like, it is not normal to work that much. I think we should probably cut down on the work week, personally, depending on the job or whatever. I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know. I know specifically for like office workers and stuff like that, like they've done a lot of research about it, and they're like, it doesn't need to be a 40-hour work week. Like, your full-time job can be less hours than 40. Just, yeah, and have more than the absolute minimum number of people needed working at the same time at any given time. That is a thing. Skeleton crews are 100% a thing, because at least in America, again, I don't know about Korea, we have done this thing where like every company needs to make record profits every quarter. And how do they do that? They cut back on things. And one of the things that they cut back on is how they do actual research of how legally, and two, to get the bare minimum done, how few people can we have working at any given time, so that we only pay like a skeleton crew to get the job done. Because if we slash workers, then we're saving more money. We're not paying people, right? So and like during the pandemic, you saw that very strongly. They were having to cut workers back anyway. And then they were like, oh man, we're able to, save money by doing that. And it just, everything after COVID got worse. But like, everything was already getting worse. But still, it's very frustrating. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm very frustrated with all of this, to be entirely honest with you. But yeah, people demanding increased profit every year is extremely unsustainable. Like, that is not, like, it's got to stop. It's like, it's going to collapse at some point, right? Cool, you've cut down to the very bare minimum of workers, and you're raising prices, and you're pricing out a lot of people, which means you're losing money, or at least not making as much money, because now you've priced out people. So what is the next thing? You have to cut back on quality. People are going to start looking elsewhere for quality products because you're raising prices and cutting quality. Well, now what is the next thing? Because you're still not, making the same amount of profits or enough profit. Like, it's, what do you do eventually, right? Because eventually it's unsustainable. You can't keep doing this. So what do you do? Anyway.
Despite this, South Korea has relatively low wages and a high cost of living. Real estate in big cities is out of reach for most people. The cost of education is extremely high, since families have to pay for private lessons if they want to send their kids to a high-tier college. All of this while South Korea spends less on family benefits than most other rich countries. Old-fashioned cultural norms make matters even worse. Marriage is all but mandatory if a couple wants to start a family. In 2023, only 4.7% of babies were born to unmarried women. Out of all developed countries, South Korean men do just about the least share of housework and childcare within their families. This leaves women with a disproportionate amount of work if they want to keep their jobs after a pregnancy, while many men are overwhelmed by the societal expectation to be the main breadwinner and have successful careers. Starting a family or not is a personal decision, and most South Koreans are deciding against it. The bottom line is that
because they're burnt out. They're fucking tired. You don't, like, they're not able to thrive. So why would I basically bring in a child into what is basically poverty at this point? Like, they're not going to thrive. So why should I bring them into the world? It's a thing. People think about that. It is a big issue that people think about.
Korea has created a culture that leads to very few kids. Conclusion. Demographic collapse is not an abstract thing in the future, it's happening right now. And it's not just South Korea. In 2023, China had a fertility rate of 1, Italy and Spain 1.2, Germany 1.4, the UK 1.6, and the US 1.6. Which sounds so much better, doesn't it? Well, after 4 generations, a fertility rate of 1.6 means 60% fewer new people. A fertility rate of 1.2 means 87% fewer people. And fertility rates are still falling with no sign of stabilization or recovery. The weirdest thing about all of this is that almost nobody involved in the public discourse has truly grasped the gravity of the situation. The last century was utterly dominated by overpopulation narratives, and people who say that we need more kids seem weird. And if you do the maths, the future just seems to be too insane to be.
That is what I am talking about. So he said overpopulation narrative. There were, like, I swear to God, I'm looking it up. Hold on, I'm gonna pause this. Give me 1 second. I found it. It was not joking. Okay. So following the Korean War in the early 1950s, South Koreans' population remained primarily rural and agricultural. I can't say that word. They were farmers. It's TFR exceeded 6 children per woman in 1962. South Korea began its national family planning campaign to reduce women's unwanted births through a program of information, basic maternal and child health services, and the provision of family planning supplies and services. The program was seen as essential if the goals of economic growth and modernization were to be achieved. Overall, the public responded well to the idea of a small and prosperous family. By 1970, the TFR had fallen to 4.5 against a background of rapid industrialization and the waning of the country's largely agrarian character. A 1974 poster, this one, exhorted sons or daughters, let's have 2 children and raise them well. So in the 70s in South Korea, they pushed, hey, have 2 kids. Quit having more kids. Like, I was not crazy. It is not just China. That's what I was saying. China had its own overpopulation policy. They had the 1-child policy for a while. That has been relaxed, I believe, with their current declining birth rate to be 2 children. And maybe relaxed further, I don't know. But for the longest time, they had the 1-child policy. South Korea had a thing where they were trying to convince people to have a maximum of 2 children. Because there was still, I believe, the thought of like, hey, try to have a boy. So they would have more and more because the idea is like a lot of them were farmers. And so it was like, hey, you need sons because daughters get married off and they leave the family. You need sons to work the farm, that kind of thing. So now it's like, cool, we're not all just farmers. Things are different. Industrial age, whether you have a son or daughter, just have to, or 2 sons, 2 daughters, whatever, have 2 kids, leave it there. In 1981, the government buoyed by its successful up to that point set a target of a 2-child replacement fertility by 1988 with a program of economic incentives. There was even some mention of a 1-child family. Even 2 children per family are too many for our crowded country. While such a saying may have seemed at least somewhat extreme at the time, it proved to be surprisingly prophetic. The 2-child target was met remarkably quickly. The TFR was down to 1.74 by 1984. So that looks wrong. Basically, they ran programs and incentives to have less children in the 70s and 80s. Technically before that, but definitely in the 70s and 80s, they did a lot of these kind of programs to try to keep the birth rate down, to try to deal with what they believed was an overpopulation issue. But now they're having an underpopulation issue. They're having a birth rate issue in the opposite direction. Yes, women can work on the farm, but women marry out. Women do not get married and stay with their birth family. They go into their married family. That is, quote unquote, the issue there. But I wasn't crazy. Told you.
It seem weird. And if you do the maths, the future just seems to
I don't
say
know what we're talking about.
the last century was utterly dominated by overpopulation narratives.
See? Told you.
And people who say that we need more kids seem weird. And if you do the maths, the future just seems to be too insane to be true, like it's hard to believe. None of this has ever happened before. So, low birth rates are mostly discussed in the context of worker shortages, not as the existential threat to our societies, cultures, wealth, and our way of life that they are. If we don't take it seriously very soon and change the DNA of our modern societies in a way that encourages young people to start having children again, then the rest of the century will be pretty grim for those of us who will live through it. The demographic freight train stops for nobody. We finally need to realize that it's hurtling down the tracks right at us. Multi-layered issues like demographic change are hard to break through in our current media landscape and easy to miss out on. This is why we rely on Ground News, a long-time sponsor and ally in helping find real stories of importance amongst the jumble of information we're confronted with every day. In a nutshell, the app and website gather the world's news in one place so you can compare coverage, see the bigger picture, and make informed decisions. Using Ground News, you can see that earlier this year, South Korea was officially classified as a super-aged society, a term that basically summarizes the effects we described in this video. But less than 100 sources covered this development. Interestingly, less than 20% of them are left-leaning media. Ground News has a special feature, the blind spot feed, that draws attention to stories like that which get lost amidst your personal publication preferences. Most importantly, you can clearly compare how the issue was covered. A government-funded source out of Slovenia, for example, mentioned Europe is considering immigration as part of a solution, while Korea, Japan, and China are avoiding that aspect. This way, you can get a balanced account and come to a conclusion for yourself. We encourage you to sign up at ground.news.
I know Japan is really hard to immigrate into. I'm guessing Korea is as well. I don't know. I know a lot of them are still kind of considered more or less closed countries. It's very hard to immigrate into them. And even if you work over there, it's hard to like become a citizen in any way. So that's a thing.
/KIN or scan the QR code and save 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Our link brings the price down to just $5 a month. By subscribing via ground.news/KIN, your investment directly supports Kurzgesagt, plus helps Ground News stay independent and able to provide a tool that's now more important than ever.
Oh, their advertisements at the end. Interesting. But yes, a lot. So there's some countries that did a whole campaigned on like have less children, and now they're like, shit, we have a population crisis. I can't even fault them. At the time, they might have had a different population crisis, right? Either way, things aren't great because birth rates are falling everywhere. We are not replenishing the workforce, which is going to cause problems down the road. Be like that, unfortunately.